Okay, what I have here are two paragraphs. The first paragraph, Marguerite is a terrible person. This came from a classmate, so let's be kind, but I will say this is a successful paragraph. So, I've not read this specific paragraph ahead of time, but I do know because it passed, it's a successful. So, this whole paragraph is going to focus on Marguerite's terrible. All of this will be evidence that she's terrible. You'll have two different arguments for why she is terrible. One idea, one paragraph. Now, after we have Marguerite's terrible, we then have another paragraph. Marguerite is trying to be a benevolent person. She's learned self-control, blah, blah, blah. Now, the problem is, do those two paragraphs sound like they belong in the same essay?
No.
The first thing that you have to do when you are writing an essay is you have to make use of transitions to explain how the two paragraphs fit together. When we're talking about her being a terrible person, and we're talking then about her being a benevolent person, how is it true that she can be both? Okay, change. So when is she a terrible person?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. When is she a benevolent person? So that is a relationship that you're telling me. The relationship is that she goes from one to the other. Guess what the function of transition is? To explain relationships. It's when you first learn them in third grade, you're told if you're starting a new idea, you put a transition there. And you were probably given a list of transitions. How many of you were given a list of transitions? Yep. The reality is anything can be a transition. It's kind of like yesterday me telling you that you can never put the word because in a topic sentence. That's a bumper I'm putting on the car so that you can't wreck it. Well, your teachers gave you transition words as a bumper to kind of get you started. But the reality is anything that explains the relationship between ideas can be used as a transition. So, tell me the relationship. What is the relationship between terrible person and benevolent person? Terrible person is at the beginning of the novel, Marguerite is a horrible person. True?
True. Yeah.
Now that sets up that we're going to be using chronological transitions. We're using where we are in time. Yes?
Yeah.
That means I don't want just one chronological transition. I would like to see chronological transitions in the openings and closings. So, at the beginning of the novel, Marguerite is a terrible person. She's terrible. The St. Cyr family, she's terrible. All in all, Marguerite is a horrible, vile person until near the end when she has her redemption. Now, I'm not using a formal transition word, am I? No. But is that going to help the reader understand the relationship between when she is a horrible person and when she is a wonderful one? Yes. And that's the function of a transition. It's kind of like the difference between you memorizing a list of prepositions and you understanding the function of a preposition. You can memorize as many transition words as you want. You will never be as good with them unless you understand the function of them. Because we're going chronological, my topic sentence and my closing sentence should tell me where I am in time. So, all in all, Marguerite is an awful and vile person until near the end when she has her redemption. Marguerite is trying to be a benevolent person. Give me a time marker.
Towards the end of the book.
Toward the end of the book, Marguerite is trying to be a benevolent person. Does that work? Okay. So, we don't have a closure on this. Do I not see a closure? Do you see closure?
No.
Oh, no. We just have a big closure. No, that's not true because that's evidence. We are missing either closure or we are missing commentary, one or the other. Read to the conclusion. Okay, this is a conclusion, so the person is missing commentary, so we would have to add commentary here if this was us. But here's what I want you to notice. What do you see?
Time.
They already had a time transition in there. And here is the trick to good writing. Some people will read enough information, they will read enough stuff that the writing rules will come to them just naturally. Some things will sound right to them. It's just like, have you ever known that person that's just really talented in sports? It just comes to them. Do y'all know that person?
Yeah.
Now, does that mean other people can't be just as good? No, it doesn't. But other people may require more coaching. They may require more effort. They may have to be more careful with stuff. So this person has already put a time transition in there because their ear just told them that they needed to have some sort of transition going. But here's what you need to understand. When I was in high school, I was actually the math science nerd. English drove me crazy balls. I had Mrs. Royer. I love Mrs. Royer. I love Mrs. Royer's little Pomeranians she would bring in. Sorry, Mrs. Royer, I still love you. But she drove me crazy because she was always giving me B's on my papers and telling me my paper didn't flow. I'm a math science person. What did I say when she said flow? Yeah, give me some actions. What would I do different? Like, why am I getting B's and other people are getting A's? Drove me crazy balls. And I was always sort of telling myself, I can't be good in English. And then I just started grabbing papers from classmates who got A's. And here's what I discovered. First of all, Mrs. Royer, God bless her soul, she was clearly a natural writer because she just knew what sounded right and what didn't sound right. Why do people interrupt my teaching? Canada. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Cadence, your dad brought your glasses to the attendance office if you need them. So, when I pulled it, what I found was it was transitions. I didn't have them. And because I didn't have transitions, or I didn't have enough transitions, or I didn't have enough variety of transitions, instead of explaining what the relationships were between ideas, everything just kind of felt plopped down. She's a good person. She's a bad person. There's no relationship between those two. And because I never gave the relationship between ideas, Mrs. Royer would always tell me it didn't flow. I still hate it when English teachers do that. And now my kids will be doing grammar correctives and they'll say, I should have chosen C because it flows better. There's no such rule as flow. But here's what I'm going to tell you. If you think you're not good at English, all that means is you're not a natural at English. Can you still learn to be really good? And in some ways, you can learn to be better than the people who are naturals. Because the people who are naturals may do it right automatically, but they don't understand the concepts. And they don't understand why it's right, which means they don't have as much ability to edit it and change it and understand what works and what doesn't work. So now that we are getting into essays, here's the one thing I never want to hear you guys tell me. I'm just not good at writing essays. Figure out which skill you're missing and develop that skill. Can you guys write an argument? Yes. Can you combine two arguments together into a paragraph? Yeah, put most important at the end. Again, what do you put in the middle to make it clear what the relationship is? Transition. And now you can take two paragraphs and put them together. And if you notice, every time we're going to glue the logical pieces together, the glue we use is transitions. Transitions will make an enormous difference in your writing. But you've got to stop thinking of transitions as first, second, last. Transitions are, what are the relationships between the ideas? So, I thought I was going to change 4 things. I ended up changing 3 things because we have a natural writer in the group that I pulled from. So at the beginning of the novel, Marguerite is a horrible person. All in all, Marguerite is an awful and vile person until near the end when she has her redemption. Toward the end of the book, Marguerite is trying to be a benevolent person. All of the pieces of evidence lead to the conclusion that Lady Blakeney had an extreme change throughout the novel from being a horrible person and denouncing people, as well as insulting Sir Percy, to risking her life for him and being a more benevolent person. And I would trim that up because what is this paragraph focused on? Benevolent. So I would trim that up. The extreme change throughout the book. Until she risks her life for Percy. Oh. And becomes a more benevolent person. Oh. I am going to move desks. Where is it? There it is. There you go. Okay. So with not even 4 sentences, with 4 phrases, all of a sudden those 2 paragraphs feel like they are connected to one another. So that's going to be your first goal when you go to turn paragraphs into essays. What are the relationships between your paragraphs? And you must add transitions in there. Now, if you had 3 transitions instead of 4, I'm not going to say I would have a fit, because sometimes you have to be flexible and you have to figure out what sounds right. But should you have a significant number of transitions?
No.
Yes, and to be safe, it would be 4. Okay? Where do you put the transitions in your paragraphs when you're going to turn them into an essay?
Beginning and end.
Topic, sentences, and conclusions. Okay? So that leaves us with, what else do we need to make an essay?
Beginning or
An introduction and
conclusion.
a conclusion. An introduction is going to have 3 parts. You're going to have a hook, you're going to have a bridge, and you're going to have a thesis. Are y'all taking notes? The thesis is going to be the easiest part. The thesis is going to be your roadmap. And that means you need to tell me what body paragraphs you're going to cover and what order are you going to cover them in. What is my first body paragraph going to be? Marguerite is terrible. What is my second body paragraph going to be? Marguerite is benevolent. Those 2 ideas must stay in order. If you have a roadmap, and your roadmap says that if you're driving north, you go Tucson and then Phoenix and then Flagstaff, can you randomly change the order of the cities? No, that's a bad map. People will get lost. Listen to me carefully, because this rule never changes. The thesis must be in order. How many of you have heard that rule before? Okay, thank the heavens that some of you have had a teacher that taught you how to write a thesis. So, if you're writing about literature, you also must include the title and the author. But the order in which you do those things is up to you. So, I might have something like, in Baroness Orsi's The Scarlet Pimpernel, Marguerite goes from being a terrible person to a benevolent one. I might have the Lady Blakeney begins as a terrible person, but ends as a benevolent one in the famous novel, The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orsi. Yes.
Do I have to be inclusive?
Yes. So, right now, the only part of the formula that it is absolutely required is terrible and benevolent have to stay in the same order. Title and author, you can put them in the beginning. You can put them in the end. Okay. In Baroness Orsi's The Scarlet Pimpernel. Marguerite begins as a terrible person, but she develops into a benevolent one. Okay. What do I have to do with titles? Quote, underline, italics. Italics. You only underline it if you are writing by hand and you don't have the ability to italicize. That's when you use underlining. So, that is my quotes go around anything that is short. So, a song title, a poem, a short story, anything that you could like read in an hour or listen to in a few minutes, that's going to go into quotes. And we use the different punctuation so that anyone who looks at it knows whether you're looking at a full-length piece or a short piece. So that's my thesis taken care of. I now need hook and bridge. Let's leave bridge for a second. Bridges are terribly important. I've never seen an SAT test that did not have at least one bridge question. And if you can use bridges, your writing is going to sound a lot more sophisticated and smoother because a bridge is a type of transition. And what do transitions give us? Flow. Yeah, I hate that word flow. Like, Mrs. Rare, I love you. I still love you. But dude, there's no such thing as flow. There are rules to English. Okay, there are lots of different kinds of hooks you can use. A hook is something that grabs the reader's attention and makes them want to read what it is that you're writing. So you could have an interesting quote and then explain the quote's significance to your topic. My kids often use philosophical foundations, so they will talk about the great philosophies of the world and then how their ideas fit into that philosophical base. You have a lot of different hooks that you can use, but the one that we're going to be working on is a historical hook. And so what you're going to do up front is you can give me one of two things. You can give me the history of the French Revolution, because that's what the book is about, or you can give me the history of the author in the book. How was the book published? When was the book published? Who is the author? Why is she interesting? So it's your choice which of those two that you're going to go for. Now, I want you to do your own research. So I am going to completely make up a background just so that you have to make your own and can't copy me. Yes?
Are you allowed to start it with the question, but...
No, stay away from questions. A rhetorical question intro can be powerful under certain circumstances, But it takes a very difficult, very thought-provoking subject and one that the reader already cares about for a rhetorical question to work. Most of the time, rhetorical questions inspire eye rolling. Because either you're asking someone who doesn't actually care about the answer, so they invest no mental energy in reading it, or you ask a dumb question and then it's like, bruh, really? No. Okay? So, rhetorical questions, those are so difficult and so dangerous, I even tell my AP kids not to use them. Because they rarely do what they're supposed to do, which is to make the reader of your paper think that you are brilliant and interesting. Okay? So let me completely make stuff up. So in a historical or a background hook, what you're going to do is you're going to look up and find interesting information. Keeping in mind, I'm making this up so that if you copy me, A, you're copying me, and B, you're going to be terribly, terribly wrong. But here we go. During the French Revolution, over 1 million French were sent to the guillotine. Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I'm typing without looking. Why is, oh, I see. Okay. During the French Revolution, over 1 million French citizens were sent to the guillotine. The king and queen were tortured before they were allowed to die, and many innocent people lost their lives until a man named, random French name, Degas Bibot, put an end to the violence. Yeah. You copy me on that and you're in serious trouble. But I need an intro to show you this next part. Because kids think that it's really, really hard to do a bridge transition. And a bridge transition is actually the easiest of your transitions. You look at your intro and you find what your main idea words are. So, French Revolution, 1 million. Guillotine. King and queen. Tortured. Innocent. Okay. Can we agree those are the main idea words in the hook? Okay. Now I want to pull main idea words from my thesis. Baroness Orsi. Scarlet Pimpernel. Marguerite. Terrible. Benevolent. Develops. So, do I have all my main idea words highlighted? When you're building a bridge, if I'm trying to build a bridge from the East Bank to the West Bank, do I have to touch the East Bank? If I'm building a bridge?
Yeah.
Yes, it has to anchor itself in the East Bank. Do I have to touch the West Bank?
Yeah.
Yes, I have to anchor myself in the West Bank. So it has to touch both sides of the river before you can walk over the bridge, correct? Those are your two banks. The bridge in between has to connect words from the top to words from the bottom. So I could have something like Baroness Orsi brilliantly wrote about the French Revolution and a character named Marguerite who was trying to help herself and others avoid the guillotine.
I'm sorry.
That's it. That's the bridge. Because Baroness Orsi comes from here. Revolution comes from here. Marguerite comes from here. Guillotine comes from here. Any sentence that includes words from the top and words from the bottom threaded together. So my bridge might be, in Scarlet Pimpernel, Baroness Orsi writes about these tortured and innocent people. Bam, bridge. Baroness Orsi, Scarlet Pimpernel, tortured, innocent. Any sentence that includes words from the top and words from the bottom in the same sentence is a bridge. Any sentence. One character named Marguerite takes a stand during the French Revolution in a famous novel written by Baroness Orsi. Bam! Bridge. Yes! Kids get themselves all tangled, and I've seen teachers create all these weird, crazy formulas for how to do a bridge. Bridges aren't hard. You stand on the east bank and take a word or two from the top. You go to the west bank, you take a word or two from the bottom, and you put them together into one sentence where they're linked. That's all it is. Do y'all see why it's kind of crazy that kids get their niggers in a twist about a bridge? It's stupid easy. In the Scarlet Pimpernel, does that come from the top or bottom? Bottom. Marguerite, top or bottom?
Bottom.
What do I now need?
Top.
I need to pull in words from the top. Yeah, I actually don't even need "and the death all around her." I can just stop right there. And dude, that is a bridge because French Revolution comes from the top. Scarlet Pimpernel comes from the bottom, as does Marguerite. Any sentence that includes both top and bottom will be a bridge. And then I do some deletes and pull it all together. And there's my intro. During the French Revolution, 1 million French citizens, untrue, were sent to the guillotine. The king and queen were tortured before they were allowed to die, and many innocent people lost their lives until a man named Degas Bibot put an end to the violence. I need to take out the word bridge. Yes, I should. Italicized. Sorry, let me begin again. During the French Revolution, 1 million French citizens were sent to the guillotine. The king and queen were tortured before they were allowed to die, and many innocent people lost their lives until a man named Degas Bibot put an end to the violence. In The Scarlet Pimpernel, a character named Marguerite tries to survive the French Revolution. In Baroness Orsi's, and I wouldn't repeat The Scarlet Pimpernel, I could just say, in Baroness Orsi's novel, and that still connects because what novel am I talking about? So novel is still a main idea. In Baroness Orsi's novel, Marguerite begins as a terrible person, but she develops into a benevolent one. Hook, bridge, thesis. How many sentences is the hook?
2, 3.
Long enough to say something interesting that makes the reader go, dang, this kid has put effort in, and this kid knows something that I want to know too. So, the hook might be 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences. The hook is long enough to be interesting. And that means you better find me some historical information that doesn't bore me. Don't bore me. Putting your readers to sleep is not being a good writer.